Hi, my name's Hannah. I wanted to take a moment to briefly introduce myself so you get a feel for who you're listening to, even if it's only for a couple of minutes. I'm a management and human resources major, member of Kappa Alpha Theta, watcher of all things late night television and comedy, lover of all things that make me feel even the slightest bit nostalgic, and I'm often found losing my mind over Taylor Swift's every move, making Spotify playlists, or taking naps long enough to qualify as a good night's sleep. I do my best to celebrate the little things while making an effort to avoid sweating the small stuff. For 22, I've been faced with some challenges that may surprise you. Well, they've surprised me at least. And it's not something I talk about often on a public platform, but one of the most difficult and arguably most pivotal moments of my life so far happened in October of my freshman year at John Carroll. I came to college with a few good friends. I thought I had it all figured out. My plan was to major in biology, play softball, make a ton of friends, join a sorority, and hopefully everything else along the way would just fall into place. Parts of my plan were coming together quite nicely. I joined a sorority and met so many empowering women that I was pleased to surround myself with. One evening, after returning to my dorm after working out, I had noticed a phone call from my mom. I decided to ignore it for the time being and take a shower. After getting out of the shower, I then had 6 missed calls and a string of text messages from her pleading me to call her back. I did, and she told me that she would be picking me up outside on the Campion bricks. I got in the car and remember very little after that. What I do recall is that she could barely get the words out. Your dad passed away this morning. She said that, and my world as I knew it would never be the same. The next few months of school were agonizing for me. 3 days after my dad had passed, I was cut from the softball team. I then dropped my major and convinced myself that I should go home, go to a community college closer to home, or take a semester off, because Carroll didn't feel like home to me. People I considered good friends left me in isolation with my self-destructive thoughts, with little to no regard for how that might be incredibly harmful to me or my mental health. I could go on and on about how through tragedy you find out who your real friends are, but I'll save you the time. What I will say is that because of it, I had an even greater appreciation for those that came into my life at my darkest. I was going home so often that my roommate nearly had a single in Campion. One thing I made note of from very early on was that when I was dealing with my grief while at school, my roommate, who I did not know at all previous to move-in day, was arguably one of the most understanding and comforting people I had ever met. I was grieving the loss of my dad, a sport I loved, and a friendship with my best friend from high school. And through it all, she made life semi-normal for me. We did face masks, watched Netflix, and best of all, she introduced me to her wildly fun and accepting group of friends. She represented something much bigger than just a good friend. Her actions were reflective of the community that John Carroll is rooted in. Not only was there an outpouring of support from her, but my sorority as well. Before October, I had met a handful of these women 1, 2, 3 times at most, and they were all reaching out frequently to ensure that I was doing okay. Fast forward to my sophomore year, my grades were slipping along with my mental health. Just when I felt as though I had a grip on life, it slipped through my hands. I had started taking some business classes, and by some, I mean accounting, statistics, business calc. Not my wisest choice, and my grades definitely reflected that. I had convinced myself that I was unworthy and too stupid or weak to continue in school. At the beginning of my sophomore year, while I was struggling with all of this, I came across my very best friend to this day. She just so happened to be in the right place at the right time, even though at the time she'd probably disagree with that statement. We started talking for what lasted roughly 4 hours in the Hamlin basement. Again, this was someone I barely knew, but in no time at all, she had quickly become one of the most supportive and encouraging people I know to this day. I spent a great deal of sophomore year sorting out my mental health while trying to stay afloat in school. I started going to therapy and taking care of myself in the way that I deserved. Junior year, life really started to come together. I realized that I enjoyed business, but even more so the people that work within it. I declared my major and was more active in the Carroll community. I finally started to feel me again. I now prioritize my mental health and recognize that it will be something I struggle with for the rest of my life, but it does not define who I am, and when I do struggle, I have created the best possible support system from those I have met at John Carroll. As a senior, I caught myself in a lot of instances taking in the little moments throughout the school year. These were nights with my friends that turned into some of my favorite memories. Spending time in the caf with those I saw a lot less because I lived off campus, making trips to Hamlin, and gathering in Griselli with my friends, full well knowing that I had no intention of getting any homework done that night. Moments like that, I wouldn't trade for the entire world. Attending John Carroll made it possible for me to meet some of the most inspiring and admirable people, probably on the planet. From the faculty, staff, professors, advisors, and others that made the community so inviting. My freshman year roommate is one of my closest friends almost 4 years later. I met women in my sorority, both older and younger, who made me feel welcome and appreciated from the very moment I joined. I have been supported, empowered, and encouraged by other members of the community as well. And though I did not become the highly esteemed biology major like I had planned, or played the sport that I desperately loved for over 16 years, I found a home in other ways at Carroll. Granted, grief does not abide by a specific timeline, and I have had my fair share of very bad days in addition to the really good ones. The bad has made me incredibly grateful for the good. I grew as an individual in ways that I did not know possible. I met my best friend and future maid of honor. I have chosen to surround myself with some of the most extraordinary people who love me for me, and this support system has only grown bigger over the last 4 years. And while this was not the ending I had dreamt of since stepping onto campus for my very first time in my senior year, I feel comforted by the memories I've created with those I love the most. In short, I think my main message is that oftentimes you don't realize the blessings that you have until you take a step back and really think about it. It's so easy to be caught up in life and what's going on around you, but one of the best things you can do throughout college and life is reflect. What may seem terrible and awful at the time, in the grand scheme of things, might not be that significant. Life has the strangest way of working out no matter what the timeline might look like. Flashback to the day when I thought there would be no light at the end of my tunnel, and my world as I knew it had ended. As it turns out, it was really just beginning. Thanks for listening.